Welcome to the Benchmarking 2.0 interview series, where we take a deeper dive into interesting projects identified during this year's performance strategy sessions. My name is Elizabeth Butler, and I'll be your host today. For those who may be new, the Benchmarking 2.0 project allows municipalities to compare their service and performance trends with other participating units. Each year, we host performance strategy sessions at the School of Government to discuss data trends and best practices. Today, we are joined by Kimberly Wynn, who is the Deputy Human Resources Director for the City of Concord. Thank you, Kimberly, for joining us today. To start off today's interview, what do you think is something everyone should know about the Human Resource Department at Concord?
I think everyone should know that we are very passionate here at the City of Concord and Human Resources Department, and we take our jobs very seriously and our work very seriously, and we do good HR work. That's one of our goals. That's one of our mottos as a department, and we really do strive to make sure that we are doing good, fair, and equitable work for the internal employees that we're responsible for, but also the community that we serve.
That's great. And that's great to hear. I'm glad that you all are doing good work out there for the City of Concord.
Thank you.
So continuing on with our next kind of segment, which is kind of the case study questions that we're going to kind of dive into. So during our performance strategy sessions, other participants were interested in learning more about Concord's new training tracking system. So to learn more about this new system, we'd like to ask you a couple questions about it.
Okay.
So the first question is, what is Concord's new training tracking system, and when and why did you decide to implement a new system in the first place?
So it is under the company or the parent company title SABA, and we recognized that there was a bit of a disconnect between how we were tracking our training. We have a program that focuses on development for all of our employees, our career development program. And in some instances, it was hard to determine which employee had completed what courses. When they completed those courses, we were piecemealing a lot of the data together. So we'd have one facilitator tracking using Google Docs, and then we have another facilitator using like paper signups or an Excel format, and it really wasn't it wasn't streamlined, and it was not housed in one central location for HR to essentially track and manage, because majority of the trainings HR was either facilitating or bringing in individuals outside of the organization and have them facilitate. So because we saw the need and we saw how we were not being very efficient with tracking the training, we did a bit of research to find a platform that could help meet our needs. And the reason we went with the one that we selected, which is SABA, is because we already had a current account with them for our performance management system.
I see. That's great. So it seems like you took some way to kind of take all that HR information, kind of consolidate it on one platform. And because you had kind of a previous partnership with your vendor that you selected for this process, you're able to kind of continue that relationship to create this new training tracking system. Yes. So to kind of delve a bit more deeper into kind of how you set the system, for example, what data, if any, did you use to make the decision or highlight the need for it? And also, who initiated the need to change and who made the final decision for this new system?
So the data that what we were looking at was that how long it was taking us to track training or even find if someone attended training, because as I mentioned, we were using a lot of paper forms. And so you can imagine someone signing in on a piece of paper, their handwriting may not be as legible. And so trying to track down a piece of paper to determine if someone completed a training was cumbersome. And we recognized that there had to be a better way or a more streamlined way to track this particular training. As far as the final decision, so the research was done internally. Since I manage systems for the city, myself and the director of human resources, we did some preliminary research. I talked with about 4 or 5 vendors, I believe, just to get an understanding of the different systems. But ultimately, we have to get approval from city management and essentially present to them what the options were. And so the final decision was made outside or above me. I just was doing the initial research and testing out the system and presenting the costs and features of the system.
That sounds great. And talking about costs, what would you say were the costs in setting up this new system?
So this particular system, because we already had a partnership with them for our performance management system, we were able to get a bundled discount, and we were able to map out the costs until our new fiscal year. So basically, we ended up getting a bundle discount, and then we were able to pay overtime or absorb those costs into our new fiscal year for this approved project. But the cost of this training system was about $40,000
I see. So because
annual.
annually, you said.
Yep. Well,
Amazing.
for that first initial startup, and then there's a contractual price over year over year.
I see. So it seems like that kind of initial partnership kind of really helped so you could get that bundle deal for
It
this
did.
project.
It did, and it helped a lot because we're very familiar with the system itself for performance management, and they can communicate to one another, which is really helpful.
Mhm.
And so, yes, it definitely helped, and it was very user friendly. So, although we were learning how to use this system, it wasn't as unfamiliar to us because we were familiar, or we've worked with the parent company before.
For sure. And that kind of also ties into our next question. So you said it's user-friendly, familiar, etc. What else do you like about this new system and how it's kind of gone about?
It is very organized. It's pretty simple to use. There are ways to track training, upload training, put in different types of courses. You can use the system to indicate that there's an in-person training or just an online training. Another cool feature of the system is even if you don't put the training in the system initially, you can go back in and assign credits and give like showing that the employee actually completed the training, even though it may not have been placed in the system initially. So it's very helpful. It's very visually pleasing and easy to determine what someone may or may not have completed. Or the training courses that an employee may have completed. So if you have direct reports, it's easy to look into the system and see what trainings they've done. So it's very user friendly, and it definitely streamlined a lot of our processes.
That's amazing. So we talked about the positives kinds of this project. It seems like there's a lot of them, but we're also kind of curious, what challenges did you face in planning and implementing the new system?
So initially, anytime you start up a new system or you're implementing a new system, you're going to encounter just glitches, and just in general, it's just things that you don't know until you in the thick of those things, and you were faced with those challenges. But initially, how we were going to get the users into this new system was a bit of a project because we had to download them from the one system and cross-reference it with our current employee roster, and then remove certain people that didn't need to be uploaded into the system. So we have some seasonal positions that wouldn't wouldn't be applicable for the training system. So the initial upload was very tedious. There were a lot of reports. There was a lot of sifting through those reports and a lot of formatting because there was certain information that we needed to go into the new system that wasn't in our current performance management system, or the way that it pulled, it didn't format correctly. So there was a lot of tedious manual updates to spreadsheets to get the users initially set up. Lots and lots of testing just to make sure that if we created a training course in the system, that it was accessible, it was searchable by certain keywords. We didn't have it expiring or ending too soon. So it was not an easy project at all, but implementing a new system is not easy. So I just think your standard tedious processes were one of the things that were a bit of a hurdle.
Yeah, I know transferring data can also be really difficult at times. So how long would you say that it took then to kind of set up this new system?
So I would say, I believe we started, and just bear with me, I'm looking at my calendar. We started with the initial research in July-ish of 2021. We began implementation in, I believe, um, September, and then it went live in February of 2022.
Interesting. So it did take a bit of time, but less than a year, for example.
Less than a year.
Yeah.
The research on the research initially is what took the most, because I had to research different companies,
Mhm.
schedule demos with certain companies, get price quotes. So that was a lot. I think I mentioned there were 5, I believe, that we ended up researching. So that preliminary research took the longest. But once we settled on this particular platform, the implementation process I would say was about 5 or 6 months.
5 or 6 months. I see. So roughly half a year almost then.
Yes.
Well, that's great to hear then. So now that your system's kind of up and running, a little bit fresh, but you got it kind of started,
Mhm.
what changes would you make to improve the new tracking system?
I think that just to for continuity of service and just ensuring that users in the HR department are really, really comfortable within the system, getting them some of the initial hands-on training that I had to do, I think would be beneficial. So I did a lot of the mock training, we setting up in a non-production, so non-prod system, changing things, testing things. I think it would be very helpful for some of our other admin users to go through that training firsthand with the vendor versus me just showing them how to use pieces of the system. So I would say just getting in front of those original vendor users who helped set up the back end of the system will be helpful for other members of HR. Although I've been told that they're very comfortable in the system, they just want to learn a few more things. I think that that would be one of the bigger pluses, or one of the advantages that we need to, or that I need to go ahead and get scheduled for them.
I see. So some way for them to kind of improve the training system
Yes.
is beneficial. So that
Yes.
sounds great. So it's been really kind of interesting hearing about this system. Kind of as one of our last remaining questions, do you have any advice for other HR managers who are thinking about adopting maybe a similar system to this?
Do your research. It's very, very important to really understand what the need is within an organization and where the gaps can be filled in at, so that you can find a system that is, meets, if not all, most of those needs. And so I would say really having a good understanding of what is needed, what you're looking to streamline, what the goal is before you start doing the research or before you adopt the system is very, very, very crucial, because you don't want to end up in a contract with the system and it has limitations that you didn't think about addressing, before you decided to, use this platform. So I would say definitely do the research, do the testing, schedule as many demos, really get a really good understanding, and bring other people on board, because it's not just one perspective. Think about other users outside of maybe the administrator. So when we were doing this initial research, we spoke with not just myself and the systems and recruitment analysts, but other members of HR, other facilitators who are responsible for certain training. So really getting a good understanding of how users will benefit from the system is really important.
For sure, kind of bringing in those people, then kind of testing things, knowing your outcomes, knowing your processes are very important when you're setting up kind of a new system such as this.
Yes.
And our final kind of question then is, do you have any kind of lingering comments or thoughts that you'd like to share about this new training tracking system?
I really do think it's been very beneficial for the city, especially for internally tracking training and keeping it in a streamlined system so that we can be much more efficient. As I mentioned earlier, if we had someone signing in on a piece of paper, our HR technician was scanning that piece of paper and trying to electronically file it. And as you guys are probably aware, saving a document or a scanned piece of paper doesn't save the names of the people who've attended the training. So if a department director called and said, "Hey, did Kim Nguyen do this DEI training?" we would be clicking on every folder and opening up every document trying to find that particular person. And so it's just been very beneficial in helping streamline our processes and keep things organized. So I do love the system. I do think that there's some opportunity for us to just take a deeper dive into the system and all of its features. But for what we needed it to do at that particular moment, it has been very beneficial and very helpful.
Well, that's great to hear. It seems like the system really kind of did what it set out to do, which is kind of streamline your process and your tracking system.
Yes.
Thank you for those final thoughts. And also thank you for taking the time, Kimberly, today to speak with us.
Absolutely.
We really enjoyed learning more about Concord's new training tracking system, and I'm sure our audience also found this information very helpful. And to kind of sum up this kind of interview, we just want to let all our listeners know we want to thank you for joining us, and also to please check out the Benchmarking 2.0 website and dashboard. And we look forward to seeing you all in the next interview.
Thank you.